Thomas here with Much Props, going to give you another how-to video. Today I am once again making an Easter bunny mask. I have made two so far. This making it a third will be a trilogy, and everyone knows the third is always the best. I understand that you read the thumbnail and you understand I'm being sarcastic and overdramatic. It's not an Easter bunny mask. I'm making Frank the Rabbit from Donnie Darko. It's a sci-fi movie about a young man who slowly loses his mind, and in that losing of his said mind, starts to hallucinate a 6-foot-tall guy dressed in a rabbit costume that tells him to do bad stuff. Yeah, you should definitely go watch it if you haven't. It's a pretty weird, creepy, awesome movie. And I of course build masks from time to time on the channel, so I thought, why not make that mask? So today we are making Frank the Rabbit from Donnie Darko out of EVA foam. Free template in the description.
Let's get to building.
To make most of my patterns, I like to use the old school method of foil and duct tape on a mannequin. You get it into the shape you want, put one more layer of foil and cover that with duct tape. Draw on seams at bends and high points, then mark registrations and cut it off the dummy. I have a video specifically going over these steps, so in a lot of my videos I speed over this build section. Just know that if I'm offering a free template, usually there's hours of work that you don't see in the video. You can download my patterns in the description below the video, or go to my website at www.muchpropstudios.com and peruse them all in one area, subdivided by categories. With the pattern in hand, I trace it onto my EVA foam. All my pattern pieces are labeled with a name as to how it relates to the body part where it goes, registration marks to help with alignment on other parts, and like on this particular piece, highlighted edges to let you know where you need to cut an inward 45-degree angle and where. Most of the mask is 6mm foam to allow it to curve, but still thick enough to hold its own shape. The cover letter of my template explains all the markings that you will see, list out the materials needed, and give you some information for assembly. Some of the parts needed just a little shaping to help get the pieces into the right direction. A lot of this one was simply getting rid of the bend in the new roll of EVA foam that I had. A heat gun is required to do this because a blow dryer doesn't typically get hot enough to loosen up the foam quick enough. Hair dryers range from about 80 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, while my heat gun here ranges from 100 degrees to 1400 degrees Fahrenheit and has fan speed control. The order of assembly doesn't really matter, but here are my basic ideas for assembly. Add contact cement to all the joining edges and let it sit for a couple of minutes. When the surface is no longer wet to the touch, you can start tacking parts together. My brand of choice for contact cement is Barge. They're not a sponsor, I just like the results I get from it. I glue up one side at a time and work my way around the mask. Since this doesn't have a lot of pieces, I was able to do it all in one go. Using the registration marks, I tack parts together and firmly push on all the seams to lock them into place. Any parts that sit proud from each other can be sanded back later with a rotary tool. I round over the sharp edges with a sanding drum on my rotary tool and then smooth the sanding marks out with a stone bit. Although for this build it's not 100% necessary, as this should look very rough and uneven in places to vary the textures like in the movie prop. Make sure if you're sanding foam that you wear a respirator and work in a well ventilated area. You don't want to breathe in the particles or have to explain to others why your sneezes are abnormal colors. I figure some parts would be easier to reach if I waited to attach the bottom jaw, so I went ahead and sanded those bits first. To give the illusion of more layers to my build, I sanded in some lines just off the side of the eyes. You could add layers here with extra foam, but I thought the less is more approach was appropriate here and just faked it a little bit. A sculptor I follow on Instagram who goes by the name Modulus Props sculpted this mask not too long ago out of clay and made it super nice for me to have reference images based off of what he built in different angles. Taking screenshots of this would be kind of hard because a lot of it is lit very dark. I also found the real props being sold on some posts online and was able to look at those as well. The ears and nose seem to be one flowing piece, so that's how I templated it out. In actuality, this mask was sculpted to form fit the actor's face and was then cast in resin. To allow for more texturing and thickness variations in this area, I went with some 10mm foam that I could carve back. Heat form the forehead area so that it will follow the curve of the base layer a little easier and not pull at it too much. Then, like in previous steps, contact cement, let it dry, and then tack it together. When doing overlays, I like to mark areas where they sit first so I can can visually see the placement and so I don't waste any glue. It also reduces the amount of cleanup I'll have to do later. So the back of the ears is a little bit weird. The tab I left at the bottom gets folded back to allow it to push the other part of the ear forward, basically making it stick straight up. I sand a channel on the front side that I'll mark in the final version of the pattern to allow for the thickness of the 10mm foam to bend easier. Once tacked on, I sand the seams flush with each other and then make the surface uneven in thicknesses to mimic the mask in the movie. The ears are exceptionally wonky. I think technically the mask in the movie has 12 top teeth, but I guess mine was a tad bit too wide on them and I could only fit 10. I manufactured them in bulk by giving myself a start and stop point, then chopped out some 8mm foam, trimmed off the tops, and then roughly shaped it with some scissors. I followed that up with a sanding drum and then super glued them into place. You can also do a little recess of the gums to make the teeth sit in just a little bit to add to the effect. For the final bit of detail, I decided to use a wood burner and sear out some cracks and holes. Definitely wear a respirator and work in a well ventilated area while burning foam. The fumes that kick off of this stuff is pretty nasty. I like to also run an air purifier right beside me as I do this so that it cleans up the air a bit quicker. I may have added a bit more texture than the actual mask, but it's always fun to put your own little flair into a build. 2 coats of Plasti Dip. Initially, I had thought about making lenses and having a semi-transparent cloth to obscure the person's face while still allowing for them to have full vision. This would be an excellent option if you wanted to walk around in this thing. Looking at the screen use props, it was just a tiny little slit above the eyes next to the nose that the actor got to see through. So after I couldn't find the proper shape for the clear plastic needed, I decided to just carve them out of some 24mm EVA foam and make the slits. My pattern pieces should get you within the ballpark, but you'll have to finesse it into shape to fit your exact eyes and give yourself enough allowance for visual at your own discretion. I guess with how dark the scenes are in Donnie Darko, Frank always seemed to be black or dark gray to me. After rewatching the movie, looking at various references, and reading about the sculptor's process, I found out that the mask had several different finishes to it depending on the scene. One had a nickel plating, and some others were just painted. I'm assuming this was to account for different lighting situations in the film. I chose to go with the less reflective and make mine just out of some silver acrylic paint. I intentionally didn't push it into the recesses to leave a little bit of black contrast on mine. For the remainder of the paint job, I simply started with a yellow base and worked my way up, adding a little bit of white to the mix as I went. The eyes got a similar treatment with an off-white for a base and pure white towards the middle. This makes it almost seem to glow in photos. Now you could dirty it up if you wanted to, but I'm going to call this build done. Hopefully you enjoy watching my process and the video helps you to make your own, or at least entertain you for a few minutes.
And we are finished. Here is the end result. Overall, I think it turned out pretty cool. That subtle transition of the off-white to the bright white kind of makes it glow in photos almost. It's a very creepy looking thing. It's very hard to see out of because it's just the little tiny slits there. I could have put a strap across the back. It's intended to have like this fur cowl that goes over it, which obviously I didn't have in time for this video, or it would be on the back of here. So I'm just going to say it's a wall hanger and call it a day. But yeah, Maybe you will try and make one of these yourselves and impress your friends with your ability to dress up in a rabbit costume even when it's not Easter and creep the mess out of every little kid within shouting distance. He's right behind me, isn't he? Maybe you'll get some...
Yay!
And inevitably, they're going to ask you, how'd you make that? You can give them one of these. Tell them, much props. I'm going to go put this on a shelf and hopefully not have to stare at it for long.
If you enjoy what I do here on YouTube and want to see more builds like this one, please consider joining these awesome list of people here with me over on my Patreon to build a bigger, better, more creative community together.